Hello and welcome to another Room 420. We have some awesome guests for you guys today. I have Cesar Gallegos and I have Addison Herron-Wheeler. You are the editor of Outfront Magazine, is that correct?
Yes.
Awesome. So we are super excited to have you in here. I know we've been trying to get you in for a while. Cesar was pretty jazzed about it. He's like, dude, guess what? We got. Guess who we're trying to get in coming.
I mean, I was super excited.
Yeah.
How often does an interview that you didn't get hired for turn into an opportunity to podcast later on? This is the American dream, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've checked out your magazine, kind of seen it everywhere. It's kind of like when you just hear something, and then you start to see it everywhere too. You know what I mean?
What
Like
is that, Streisand effect?
Yeah, something like that. It's like I was in Mutiny Information Cafe, and I was like, oh, we get to talk to her tomorrow. That's pretty cool. So
That's awesome.
yeah. So Cesar, I know he was pretty excited to ask some questions to kind of interview you, so I'm kind of going to let him take the lead on that.
Yeah, this is my first time doing this, so don't mind me if I get a little flustered here and there, but I'm going to try my best. So you work at OFM. Can you tell us a little bit about your magazine, what you guys write about, and what you do at the magazine?
Yes. So we are OFM, Outfront Magazine, Colorado's LGBTQ media. We've been around for 46 years now, since 1976. But this is the first time that we are female/non-binary owned, starting in October 2020. And we are, like I said, Colorado's LGBTQ media, and what that looks like has changed a lot over time, I think. We initially started in Boulder. When the magazine started, due to the nature of the times, it was very geared towards, attractive, young, white, gay men. And just sort of since I started working there, and especially since I took over as co-owner, our mission now is to really be expansive and inclusive of the entire community.
And that's amazing. You can really tell from like the content of your magazine that you're really on top of including every voice within the LGBTQ community, including Black and brown voices specifically, because that's really important to include. We were just talking about this pre-podcast, but you're out from Virginia, from the East Coast, and OFM is in Colorado. Was born and raised here in Colorado, for lack of a better word.
It's a native.
It's a Colorado native. #. What made you want to keep OFM in Colorado?
Well, I don't think there's ever a question of, moving OFM outside of Colorado. We've always been here, and our mission, first and foremost, is to serve the community here. Eventually, we would like to expand and be in, other markets and serve more of the country, even more of the world. And we are getting more national and global in the sense that we have online readers from all over the country, even globally. But our core mission is always going to be to serve Colorado, Denver, and the Rocky Mountain region.
Amazing. And you write for Cannabis for your magazine, right? Can you tell me a little bit about your expertise behind that?
Yes. Well, in addition to writing for OFM, I write for High Times. I was a staff writer over there for a little while. Now I'm a freelancer. I'm also a freelancer for High There, for Grow Mag, for Culture and Dope, which are owned by High Times. And I've written a little bit for Sensi in the past as well. So, and for Westward and 303. So pretty well versed in the cannabis writing arena.
Wow, that's amazing. See, I didn't know about the High Time stuff. That's cool. So you're a cannabis, a writer, long stay. Would you say you've been here a while?
Yeah, I've been doing it since 2013. I like to say now that my area of expertise is writing about cannabis access, equality, the LGBTQ community and intersectional issues, and also extreme music. I used to just say I write about weed, metal, and gay things, but that doesn't sound as academic, so
You're like, market that differently.
Yeah.
It's like our video guy Noel will talk about. He's like, oh yeah, like in the Philippines or something. I'll tell my family I work in drugs and sell drugs and stuff, dude.
No, don't say it that way.
Don't say it that way. It's such an interesting industry to work in. Honestly, I'll say that. Same thing with my family. My mom was really confused about what I did, to where I'll have like my little sister calling me up and she's like, hey, Mom told me that you sell weed. Is that true? And, I don't really know how to like explain it to her. Yes, but no. In a sense, but not really. But so you actually used to work at a dispensary too. Is that right, Addison?
Yes, I worked for a little bit at the front desk at a dispensary. And my husband also worked in cannabis in the past. So pretty well versed working in the Colorado cannabis side of things as well.
Did you guys meet in Cannabis or
No, we met in high school. We met when
school?
we were 14.
That's awesome.
So
High school sweethearts.
yes, we moved out here together.
God.
So
That's amazing. That's how you know it's real.
right.
What was your favorite part, least favorite part about working in a dispensary?
I think my favorite part was getting to be really immersed in the industry. You know, obviously the goodie bags and the freebies were cool, but it was also really cool, I think, making those connections and getting to learn more about it from the inside after writing about it. But originally writing about it, kind of living up in Evergreen and being a little cut off from everything, just writing. The worst things I would say are definitely, it was in the ballpark neighborhood. So there were just a lot of, you know, tourists who wanted to argue with me about their IDs, a lot of just dealing with unhoused folks walking in, trying to be compassionate to them, but also trying to keep the space safe. And just a lot of people calling and asking about, you know, could they come and buy pounds and drive them back over state lines? And, you know, it's kind of like being like a front desk person, a bouncer, a secretary, and an admin assistant all in one position. So it's a lot.
And it's so new because it's not like being a liquor store salesman, you know, where there's a little bit more understanding, I guess.
Exactly. And you would get a lot of older folks who are just like, can't you tell that I'm definitely over 21? I'm like, yes, that doesn't matter. We need to know that you have a valid ID. Otherwise, we can't sell to you regardless of age. So
You're like,
there's
I don't
a lot
know.
of that.
I've seen some pretty good prosthetics. Anything is
Right?
possible.
Could be anyone.
Could be a child under that face makeup. I didn't know you worked in the ballpark district though. Can I? What dispensary was it?
So it
curious.
was called Ballpark. It's no longer there.
Oh.
I'm not sure what happened because it, I guess, went under after I left, but it doesn't seem to be
Yeah,
there
that's
anymore.
why.
So
It tends to happen. You were carrying the company
Yes,
your entire
totally.
work.
Does your back hurt from carrying it?
no, I think in general, if anything, all of the issues there, from what I've talked to with other people in the industry, seem to be pretty, you know, across the board for the industry. So.
I've heard.
It's definitely the Wild West for a minute with, I think, a lot of the gray market and just rules in general and stuff too, having to figure that out and be kind of the guinea pig a little bit. And you've kind of seen that definitely coming here.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you've seen the industry change, like in the time that you've been here in Colorado? I specifically am talking about like their inclusion of the LGBTQ plus community, because I know the cannabis industry in a lot of different states has issues with inclusion. I mean, I just read a statistic today that only 2% of all dispensaries are Black owned in the United States, which is like, you know, we got to do better. But can you tell me a little bit how it's gotten better or worse here in Denver?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, in addition to Denver, I think I've seen a lot of visibility to California just because that's where most of the places I write are based out of. But it seems like when I started in 2013, the idea of women in weed not just being a woman in a sexy bikini with a bong selling it, but actually, you know, working in the industry, that seemed kind of groundbreaking. I didn't hear many conversations about, you know, all the incarcerated people, specifically incarcerated Black and brown people, while the industry was making money. Those kind of conversations were few and far between. And now it feels, to me at least, much more common to at least acknowledge, you know, celebrating the people in the industry who are queer, who are women, who are Black, and having these conversations. I've seen a lot more businesses. I know Cookies is really big on plugging that kind of thing, and they've really expanded and popped off. So I've seen a lot more of just kind of that acknowledging and working it into the conversation of, okay, it's still messed up. You're still going into a store and buying what some people are in prison for, but now 10% of the profits go to getting them out of prison or something. So I do feel like there's some positive steps taken in that direction.
It's a start. And, you know, I feel like I've just been seeing a lot more of the intersection between, like, queer issues and marijuana come together. I know this is the first year we just wrote an article about this. I'm trying to remember what the Queer Cannabis Club, I think. And they hosted an event up at Aspen Gay Ski Week.
Oh, cool.
So it's been really cool to see, like, new companies like that pop up all over the place. People who are genuinely making an effort for inclusion. But I feel like there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
It's nice that we're acknowledging now at this point, but there's still so much work to do.
Absolutely. And I think in general, it is still, you know, predominantly a lot of cis white men in the industry. And, you know, obviously they have a place in the industry as well, but I think they're kind of even starting to acknowledge wanting to bring up other voices, wanting to make, you know, LGBTQ people that work at their companies feel heard. So I feel like all that's a positive step as well.
Amazing.
So we kind of we talked a little bit about how the community's helped with HIV activism back in the day too.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, no, that was a big one.
Not to hit my favorite line, which is I read this in an article recently, but I was just reading about how actually the fight to get medical cannabis for HIV patients in California, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, was California the first state to get medical cannabis going, or one of the first at least?
I believe so.
Right. But a lot of that was tied in with HIV activism.
Yes,
Can you
correct.
tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I started learning more about that too when I started working in Outfront, already coming from the cannabis background. One of the cool things I got to do was interview Lynette Shaw, who was best friends with Dennis Perrone, who was one of those cannabis activists. And I actually just revisited that interview this weekend because I wrote a piece for Culture about a documentary about Dennis that's coming out. So it's awesome to kind of have just looked at that, so I feel like I know what I'm talking about. But yeah, essentially, and then also Good Chemistry, the brand that's really big out here, they got their start because the owner had two dads. Both of them were suffering from HIV, and so he started growing cannabis for them and with them, and they were involved in these early buyers clubs as well. So there's some cool history there. But yeah, essentially it was a lot of folks just kind of realizing HIV patients needed relief, and they needed compassion, and also cannabis was kind of being stigmatized in the same way. So there was a lot of work being done around growing cannabis and either just giving it away or selling it at a rate to essentially just cover costs and keep the grow going, but not profit, just to provide medicine, as well as a lot of outreach and going and talking to, senators and police and different political people in California to kind of push that medical legalization through really early.
And honestly, I mean, they did some amazing work, obviously, but I feel like that part of it makes it even more sad that now a lot of the people that don't have access or aren't able to access, or a lot of the people that were there early on trying to get medical going in the first place.
Right. And of course, at the time, they were all being raided over and over again. And then compared to that, it's very hard to get a legitimate business going. You do have some cool success stories like Good Chem, where it's like, they're huge, but they're still independently owned, and that's how they started. But there's, I'm sure, plenty more stories of they were caregivers, and now they can't really afford to be in the industry anymore.
It feels kind of like a give and take, where it's like the government will try to put more red line, more regulations on it to make it a little bit more open for minorities, for LGBTQ folks and everything. But a lot of the times, it just makes it harder for people to even get into the door to begin with. And I've read about a lot of investor groups that will fund a person who's applicable for one of these licenses, like the social equity licenses, and they'll pitch in with the idea that, hey, whenever you open your dispensary, I get a profit of it. I get profit. So it's really sad to see it kind of feels like sometimes as much as we try to make it equitable, there's always someone that's going to find a loophole.
Absolutely. And, I've even talked about that with Good Chem and a few of our other clients where, it's rare to be independently owned at all anymore, whether it's media or cannabis. So we're kind of all trying to stick together.
It's hard out here.
Yes.
This is why I extra appreciate the work that you're doing, because, I feel like sometimes, and I was going to bring this up a little bit, but talking about, the corporate pride discourse. Yes. There's a point where in these movements, whatever movement it may be, where once the corporate world gets into there, it's kind of hard to know what the intentions are necessarily.
Yes, it's definitely difficult, and I think it's been a conversation. I've definitely been hearing the conversation this year, and it's really hard because I can see it from both sides as a person who isn't big on capitalism and would rather see things remain more independent. That's important to me, but at the same time, I understand from a business owner perspective, OFM almost went under during the pandemic. The center really struggled during the pandemic because they couldn't throw Pride, and that's essentially what funds their year-round programming. Yes. So, my big thing with that is if we're going to talk about taking away these corporate sponsors, I'm open to the conversation, but we need to have that money coming from community funding or government funding. There needs to be some other way to fund these things. And that's my soapbox.
Oh, look, we're here for it. This is why we had you here. We love you. We love you getting on the soapbox. This is why we appreciate your magazine, because you guys aren't bound, as much. Obviously, with any business, you're a little bit bound by business agreements and all that stuff. But it feels like you guys, being independently owned, have a little bit more freedom to write about whatever you'd like to write about.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is really important. And so another piece of the corporate pride stuff that I was very interested to ask you about. So I've heard the take online that, you know, I feel like we made so much progress throughout the 2010s in terms of like LGBTQ rights. And it kind of feels like we've been in a couple year stretch where they're slowly being like dismantled again. Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of online discourse where people are saying at this point, corporate pride or, you know, rainbow capitalism is kind of like the last little barrier that lets people know like, hey, as long as LGBTQ issues are still like the popular take, the take that'll make money, there's a little bit of solace in that. Mm-hmm. Where do you stand on that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so you mean essentially the fact that there are still these corporate sponsors does at least show that people are trying to show up on the side of good, right, even if it's performative.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's something to be said for that. And I think it's so hard because with late stage capitalism, there is so much of, you know, these big funders are in some way connected to someone who is funding something anti-LGBTQ. But on this side of things, it looks better for them to fund something that is pro-queer. And that's obviously a bigger issue than any of us can dismantle or take on today. But I do think that, you know, any sort of money that queer organizations like OFM and the Center that have been around since the 70s can get to do good is going to keep making a positive impact. I think what it's really important to look at more so than, oh, are they taking money from this person who might be connected to a group that took money from someone else or gave money to someone else, is who is in charge of these organizations and what are they doing with this money? You know, are they taking a giant, you know, salary and then not really paying their people, or is it a situation like, you know, OFM and the Center where they're kind of just getting by, but they're really passionate and trying to get the work done?
That's what makes it so difficult.
Yeah,
it feels like
exactly.
You have to do 20 pages of research, these days
yep.
just to figure out where it's cool to purchase from, who it's cool to support.
Yes.
It's so difficult. Circling back to a little bit more centered on your magazine, can you tell us about maybe a favorite interview or feature that you've had so far?
It's so hard because we've done so many cool ones. Let's see. One that I didn't actually do the interview, shout out to Denny Patterson, our celebrity interviewer. He is amazing, but we got John Waters for the cover. I'm a really big John Waters fan, and I grew up on his movies thanks to my dad. So I know it's weird, but that was a weird, like, making my dad proud. Like, I got John Waters on the cover. I got to talk to Whoopi Goldberg for Culture a few years ago, and that was really cool. I actually did the interview from the back room of the dispensary where I was working. Wow. Because the only time we could get the interview to work was when I had a shift, and I brought it to them, and I was like, hey, please. And at first they thought I was interviewing for another job, so they were pissed off. And then I had to explain, like, no, Whoopi Goldberg's not hiring me for anything. Yeah. Interviewing her for a magazine. So that interview was really cool. I got to sneak in some questions about, you know, movies and Star Trek and her shoe collection, in addition to her cannabis brand, which was what she mainly wanted to focus on.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Honestly, I know. I'm like, dang. Yeah.
It was a cool one.
You should have told your boss, like, shoot, I wish Whoopi Goldberg
was
interviewing
right?
me.
And then when they all did find out what I was doing, they were, like, waiting outside. They were so excited, like, waiting outside the door listening. Like,
oh, my God.
So cool.
That's amazing. Do you, kind of on the same line, do you have a favorite, like, queer celebrity that's a little bit more in, like, the cannabis realm now, a little bit too, some of that overlap? I'm thinking, like, who am I thinking like?
I don't know. I mean, definitely Dennis Brown is a cool one.
Telling me about Evie Oddly a lot, too.
Yes, Evie Oddly's amazing, and I could see, definitely how they're aligned with cannabis. That has been really cool because she's been a big fan of the magazine, and when she got to be on the cover, even though she had already won RuPaul's Drag Race, she was like, being on the cover of Out Front was a childhood dream, and I was
That's super cool.
I love that you're still excited about this after literally winning RuPaul. So
do you get a lot of people that tell you that too about Out Front magazine?
Definitely, especially people from around here, you know, that get so excited about it. Maybe they've, you know, been reading it for longer than I even knew what it was since they were 10 or something, and I'm like, it's so cool when they get to see their name in print finally, or get to see something covered about them or a photo of them or something.
What did that feel like for you when you're like, oh, I own this? Was there like a holy cow moment or something?
Yeah, it was definitely overwhelming. I mean, like most millennials, I always say I don't own anything. I don't own a home. I'm lucky I own a car. Like, so it felt very permanent, especially since I think as millennials, we're often used to being in this flux of like I could go anywhere at any time. I might have to because everything's so up in the air with everything. So it really felt like the most solid, like putting down roots. And then, of course, it felt like a lot of pressure because it was like buying this failing business during COVID. The first time it's woman-owned is not the time that you want it to go under. And just really trying to be like, okay, can we get the grants and loans to push us through until things do open back up? And then can we convince people, you know, to still work with us even though we're under different ownership?
It's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
I'd kind of read a little bit of homework on you a little bit. I read that you're a metalhead, too.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, I want to ask that.
Yes, I'm in a band based in Denver, and then I'm managing editor of New Noise magazine, which is a queer women-run music magazine, mostly metal and punk, and then I contribute to some other metal publications as well.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. Plug your band. You can't just
Yes,
drop
we are
it.
called Chronos Compulsion, and we have a show on June 23rd at Moe's Barbecue.
I love Moe's Barbecue.
Yes.
I want to
Come
go
out for
check it
some
out.
delicious barbecue and death metal.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, my friends, they used to be in Scarlet Canary. Do you know them at all?
I don't think so.
Big
Maybe
the metal
some-
scene is and stuff, but yeah. I think they're a little bit before COVID. But yeah, they
Okay.
did do some shows at Moe's Barbecue.
This is your guys' area of expertise. This is
I was like-
the two metal experts here.
This is the fun of a podcast. I just like
Yes.
getting to know people and stuff too. I think music is usually like the biggest way to like kind of, I guess, build bridges in some ways for me too. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
definitely.
It does bring us all together.
Caesar over here makes some of our playlists as well.
Oh,
You
yes.
know, on Spotify.
Check them
like,
out on
yeah.
our website.
Yeah.
My own plug.
If you send me a link, we'll add some metal. We'll make a Toke Tunes metal one, dude.
Honestly, is there any good metal you like to listen to while you're high or?
Oh,
ingesting,
definitely. I
consuming?
mean, just off the top of my head, I love the metal stoner classics like Bongzilla and Weed Eater. Weed Eater are one of my favorite bands. Tend to be listening a little bit more to death metal lately, but there's also definitely some really great. Cannabis Corpse is a really obvious like weed themed.
That's awesome.
But a lot of other bands that I've been listening to, like Undeath, Blood Incantation, who are right here from Denver, have some really cool songs for getting high to as well.
There's sometimes I'll just put on Mac Sabbath.
Yeah.
They're pretty goofy too. They're pretty awesome. All right, man. Got any more questions you like to ask, brother?
Well, winding down, I feel
Yeah.
like I've been trying to pitch this to be our like final like podcast question going forward. But can you give us your dream blunt rotation? Like 3 or 4 people, dead or alive.
Okay.
Dead or alive.
Okay, let's see. I'm trying to think. I've always said, like, I feel like everyone I look up to hates each other because it's either, like, problematic men, unfortunately, or, like, really intense feminists. I don't know. But I think maybe, like, Margaret Atwood,
Yes.
Hunter S. Thompson, and Corpse Grinder from Cannibal Corpse would be a
Ooh.
pretty awesome blunt rotation, I'll say.
I would pay to watch everybody in that rotation get
Just
high
hanging
and see what they
out,
talk
right?
about. I'd
I
be so
know.
curious.
So
Oh my
interesting.
goodness.
That's awesome. I love that last question, dude. That's the best one to go off of.
I'm telling you, it's the best one. It reveals a lot about a person.
Yeah.
It's your influences, what you base your life on, who you're cool to smoke with.
Awesome. Hey, I appreciate you coming in and talking to us. And hey, guys at home, check out Outfront Magazine. Is there anything else you'd like us to know and plug?
Yeah, I think just you can follow my work pretty much either through High Times or any of those other metal publications. Follow Outfront on outfrontmagazine.com. We have a lot of cool stuff coming up. A lot of events this summer. We'll be at a lot of events this summer. We have the equity pages launching soon, which is essentially going to be a database for searching for, either queer-owned businesses, black-owned businesses, things like that, and the intersections between those. And we are also now owners of Suspect Press, so we're doing a lot more work with book publishing and literary stuff as well. So stay
Amazing.
tuned for all of that.
Congratulations, by the way. That's awesome.
you.
You're going to bring
awesome.
more freedom out here to all these different sectors that really need it.
Trying to.
I hope you get some rest too, man. Sounds like you just going.
Never. Yeah, I feel like never.
No rest till August.
Yep.
Literally.
All right. Well, hey, thank you guys so much for listening. Be sure to follow us at Veriheal.com to stay tuned with the latest in cannabis news. Thank you guys for listening.
Let's go. All right. Been cooped inside the last 2 weeks and now I'm stepping out. Just you and I don't have to speak the silent heaven sound. My future running out rapidly, make the seconds count. I have my 9 lives, 2 to go and 7 down. So what I got to lose? Let's roll the dice, I'll hold you tight. We'll bet on black and let them laugh and beat the odds and leave them all up in the dust. Give me a call and ring me up. Tell me all we need is us. I think the odds just evened up. Ted DiBiase making bucks. He wasabi, heat me up, go work that body, shake that rum. Lottie Dottie, make it jump. Tell Scotty, beat me up to outer space. I'm out this place, I'm going anywhere but here, and that's it.